So I was just driving out to Chaco Canyon and I was looking at all of the landscape here in New Mexico, and I was just thinking back to in one of my music video for the Dirty Old Town song. I have this video of me playing guitar in front of this old Indian structure with a fence around it. And it feels kind of cheesy when it comes up in the video. I felt like that when I first saw it, but that structure and the fence around it means a lot to me. It's kind of like a symbolism. For one, it's right outside my job. It's right outside where I work. And just these weird things started happening where the people, the maintenance staff would go along and create this 2 mile trail, like they were carving this trail out of the ground, with all this equipment. And it just didn't make any sense. It's like they're leveling the dirt. I mean, you could just tell that it was just something to keep them busy. Like, people don't need a trail carved out for them. Trails are something that happen naturally when you walk a path, when enough people walk the same path, and plenty of people were walking this path that, like, there was just no need for it. The struggle with bureaucracy is something that I'm always sort of conscientious about, because it's somebody in a position of power that basically doesn't produce something. Their own productivity is sort of held up by their own bootstraps. Like, they do things to try to legitimize themselves. Their narrative is that they try to keep these rules and structures in place, but really doesn't serve a purpose. So, I want to tie in all these ideas, the notion of being aware of bureaucracy and the fact that you're trying to keep people busy by creating this 2 mile paved fancy structure that you really don't need to have government employees working on. And then these signs started popping up along the trail, these like little positivity signs. And every time I would walk, it would say like, keep at it, keep going, think positive, all this shit. And every time I would see them, I would think somebody was sitting in an air-conditioned desk somewhere with the job of Googling positive signs to put on some trail that people are walking. And it just seemed ridiculous to me. Like somebody was literally employed to go and hammer in these posts and put up these signs and think about the content of these signs and get them printed. And it's just ridiculous. Like, what's the point of this person sitting in their office? So I like going for walks at work, and there was this old Indian structure, going back to this. And one day there's a fence around it. Something rubbed me really wrong about putting a fence around this old Indian structure. Things, I think, even if they're historic and important, should be a part of life. They shouldn't be fenced off. Think about what the Indian structure means. It was created as a fence, right? The same mentality that made us put the fence is the mentality that made people create that structure in the first place, which is that they want shelter and they want protection from outside sort of enemies and things. Okay? Well, what purpose is that serving in today's society? It's still providing shelter and protection from outside things. Like, there's people that probably would sleep in there and didn't have maybe a roof over their heads, and maybe they felt shelter in that, right? So the same societal things that made people build that 100 years ago or whenever it was built still exist. People are still trying to find their own safety and comfort and security. But the mentality of the people to build the Indian structure is the same mentality of the people putting a fence around it. It's protection. In either case, it's protection. But the initial structure that was used for protection transcended its initial use, and it became a historic thing with all of this meaning. And probably that's because the notion of protection and security is so instinctual and innate in people, it allows us to elevate the importance of this structure that the Indians created. And so our response to that is to protect it, to put a layer of protection around it. But here you have this very interesting structure. It's visually appealing and kind of symbolic. It mixes with the landscape. It's made from the landscape. And you have an artificial structure on top of it, which is metal and barbed wire. It's sharp, it's pointy. There's nothing positive in a symbolic way about the cage that they put around this structure to keep people out. So Thinking of that cage as an extension of the initial Indian structure, thinking of the idea that the same human mentality created both of them, we're never going to protect the cage. 100 years from now, 200 years from now and such, people aren't going to look at this structure that we put around it and view it in any positive way. It's just an obstruction to the actual protection and the use as a place to hang out and a place to have a roof over our heads. So it's actually very oppressive. The symbolism of restricting people from something that is innately human, that provides an innately human need, by putting a cage around it made out of metal that has no visual appeal, that's not made from the actual earth. There's an artificiality of the materials, and there's an artificiality of the intention of putting that structure there in the first place. Like, do you really want to be in a city where they put a fence around something so that you can't enjoy it, Like, it's this weird mix between the stereotypes that we would have for, like, conservatives, for example, is that anything that's too fun, rock and roll, anything that challenges the cultural norms, you want to put a fence around it, you want to restrict. But it slices way more complicated than that in terms of just associating that with Republicans or conservatives. Because you can have a whole narrative of protecting, right? The left sort of interpretation is that we're protecting an Indian structure. But now, again, you're restricting access to the safety and security that this structure provides by building an artificial fence around it. And so the intentions of putting that fence around it is also artificial. I just get bad vibes when I saw that. Thanks for listening to my little rant. I was driving and I got really kind of irritated thinking about that, and maybe inspired by the landscape. There's really cool things going on here. And, sometimes I get really passionate when I'm talking, and I really just want to have conversations with people. That's the type of thing, is like, do you agree in any way? Do you see like sort of the larger meaning of what I was talking about, or am I just like inventing things and making things up and being way more sensitive about something that I shouldn't be sensitive to? So I don't know. I do want to like try to communicate these type of thoughts and have conversations with people. So let me know in the comments. Hit me up with the likes and shares and subscribes, and just, I don't know, let me know what you think about this.